Um, so for maybe Stephanie could let me know if you can see the screen that I'm sharing. Everything look okay? Good, awesome. All right, then let's get started. So Saint Junípero Serra and the founders of San Juan Capistrano in Orange County. This is a project that I started about 1.5 years ago. It just so happens that it's become quite a topic of discussion of late. But for this, Steph, is it freezing? Can you hit spacebar so I can hear you? Or hold it down? Because you're muted.
Yeah, it's freezing.
Oh no! Okay. Is it any better right now?
Yeah, it's fine now.
Oh, and it was doing just fine just a minute ago, and now it's suddenly freezing. Okay. So can you hear me now? Okay, I'm going to get started. Okay, so let's dig right in, and we'll quickly go over Serra's life up until his time in Alta California. And so this covers the year 1713 to 1770. So Serra was born in Mallorca, Spain, which is an island to the east of Spain, Spain proper, in 1713. He was actually one of the oldest people in California when they did come here. The Spanish came here to settle it. And he became, at an early age, he became a Franciscan college professor, and just when he was in his 20s. So he was a very bright guy, and he eventually became a missionary at about the age, I'm sorry, it's chopping out a little bit. Stephanie's face, it's chopping out pretty good, isn't it? Oof, I don't know why. I wonder what's causing that. I'm sorry, everybody. The other option, Stephanie, is I can call you, and if your connection's better, and the phone could play on the speaker. And
Eric, you don't have an Ethernet cable to hook to your computer, do you? So
I do not have an Ethernet cable. I'm going through a router.
Okay, yeah, sometimes there's a Wi-Fi connection. A wired connection would be a lot smoother, but that's okay. We are what we are.
Okay. Well, how about we can try this for a minute, and if it doesn't work, then I'll switch over to the Ethernet. Okay.
Hey Eric, this is Brandon.
So
if it continues, if you mute yourself here and call in on your cell with the number that Zoom provides, your audio connection is really small, and so you'll be able to be a lot clearer. We do this for work all the time. So if it continues to chop, if you mute on your computer but call in through your cell so it doesn't reverb, the cell usually will work.
Do you have that number handy?
I'll get it and chat it.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry, you guys. Oh, thank you, Tracy. You're very kind. Is it still? Yeah. California in the late 1760s. And I still see that it's being really, really bad. I'm so sorry, everybody. It was doing just fine. You know what, I can try doing a direct connection. And if you have that phone number, that would be great. Let me try moving it over.
Technology is improving our lives in magical ways every day.
I think this is kind of a testament to how much we all miss this, right? We're willing to wait and see how it goes so we can get the information. We're very patient. You guys are awesome. This is great. Haha, Brandon, yay!
Hey, I don't know your specific user ID. I'm sorry, I put the wrong password in. That's my participant ID. So for anybody whose audio doesn't work, what you can do is call in on your cell phone, because the cell phones, they just don't use as much data, and it's often, but not always, clearer. So you see on the bottom left, everybody, where you can mute, or it depends if you're on an iPhone or an iPad, but a lot of times it's on the bottom left, and there's a little caret, a little arrow there, and then on there, there's one of the options should be switched to phone audio. When you click on it, it's not going to hang you up. It'll just pop out this little window that tells you. I just copied the first number on there. There's a bunch of numbers to call, and then there's a meeting ID and participant ID and a password. I apologize. I put my participant ID. It should be Eric. You'll have your own ID on there, and then the password, and that should be the same meeting ID and passcode that was sent out. But if you use that participant ID, it's smart enough to sync you up and show that that's you talking. I don't think well, it might not matter. I'm not sure. It depends on how we set it up, but hopefully that'll work. I apologize for jumping in. It's just we do it a lot for work, so I wanted to make it as smooth as possible for everybody.
It's so appreciated. This is great.
Nerds for the win.
Yay! This in itself is somewhat historical, right? You guys are a big part of the history of OCHS right now as we navigate through 2020 COVID times, right? And this is all recorded too. So someday, 100 years from now, people are going to say, hey, remember that first virtual meeting?
Yeah, we're all becoming really good at Zoom by doing and
Okay, I think I'm back.
Yay, we hear you.
And this time it's going to work because I'm using my phone, and I'm going to share my screen, but I have to reattach a couple things. I'm so sorry, everybody. Already joined by phone. Okay. Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes, yes, you sound great.
Okay.
Yes.
Host. So, Steph, can you make me host again so I can share my screen? And thank you so much, everybody, for the patience. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. Okay.
All right.
Is this working now?
Yep.
So you can see now.
Perfect.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, great. Then I'm going to go ahead and get started on it.
Eric?
You still there?
I'm not hearing anything.
Eric?
Yeah, what happened?
I don't know.
Okay, I've been in communication with Eric. He's going to try coming in again.
We need hold music.
Okay.
Okay. Am I back?
Yes.
You're back.
Okay, I'm going to try to do this presentation in 60 seconds. Okay, while you have me. Okay, so Sarah was with the Portola Expedition. He marched up from Baja California, but he got to San Diego and he stayed put while the rest of the expedition went up in search of Monterey. He then sailed to Monterey on the San Antonio in 1770. This is the kind of ship that he would have first laid eyes on Orange County aboard. This is by a historian up north. He's done a lot of research on the packet ships. From this railing, he would have seen Orange County as he traveled up to Monterey. Okay. Sarah learned, the first thing he learned about Orange County was about the village of Tutucna, which is a large village on the Santa Ana River near Olive. Think where about the 91 and the 55 meet, in that area. And he planned the founding of Mission San Gabriel near Tutucna in 1771. That was the original place where he was going to found it. But when the commander general and the missionary was going up from San Diego to found it, not Sarah, they decided to instead found Mission San Gabriel on the San Gabriel River, not the Santa Ana. This is what Sarah knew of Orange County. It came from his fellow Franciscan and former student, Father Juan Crespi. And Crespi had written in his journal during the Portola Expedition that our Sergeant Ortega and two of us fathers told them, the Indians of Tucna, we would come back, and when we did, would make a house for the sergeant and for ourselves and one for God, that he might be worshipped by them. And upon our saying this, such tears of joy and happiness sprang to their captain, the Spanish word for the village chief or leader was capitan, his eyes, as touched the hearts of all of us. So to Sarah, this was the place where he was going to put the mission. It didn't end up going there, but it was still the first impression he had of Orange County. His first passage through Orange County was with the military commander, Lieutenant Pedro Fages. They were going down to San Diego to try to convince the supply ships to go up to, north to Monterey, because the supply ships had run into bad weather. He spent 2 nights in Orange County, probably the first on the Santa Ana River near Olive, near the village of Tutucna, where he would have met with the Indian villagers that Father Juan Crespi had met during the Portola Expedition a couple years earlier. And the second night, he probably stayed in San Juan Canyon, up Ortega Highway from the mission, at about just south of Coto de Caza. After seeing the country, he agreed that Mission San Gabriel was founded in a better location. He agreed that the San Gabriel River was better than the Santa Ana River for a mission. So this is who Sarah traveled with. Right here we have the there's 2 known images of Pedro Fages. This is the better of the 2. Fages, and this is one of the best known images of Sarah that we have, painted shortly after his death. And so imagine guys like this coming through Orange County at the time. I see the chat, no sound. Can you guys really not hear me?
I can hear you.
We can hear you.
I can hear
I can
you.
hear you
Okay,
too.
We hear you.
Okay, then I'm going to.
Yeah.
These guys, Pedro Fajes was a Catalonian volunteer. You can see his blue uniform here. This person depicted with him is another Catalonian volunteer. That's who, and Jose Antonio Yorba the first was a Catalonian volunteer. So this isn't Yorba, but it's a stand-in for what Yorba would have looked like. Yorba may have been on this first trip that Sarah took down from Monterey to San Diego. If he was, it would have been his first time seeing what would later become his rancho. Moving on, okay, Sarah's second passage. So real quick, when Sarah comes down to San Diego the first time, he actually sails back to Mexico during the year 1773. And he's fighting out some political battles that I won't get into now, but he comes back in 1774 to San Diego and decides to walk back up the coast, or on horseback, which surprised all of his countrymen because they said he was actually seemingly ill. So he travels overland from San Diego to Monterey with Father Francisco Garces of the first ANSA expedition. It was their only meeting, and anybody who knows desert history knows that Garces is one of the most well-known, probably the greatest explorer of all the Franciscans in the Southwest. He's known for many, many times that he went out by himself or with just a small group, and he explored the Gila River. He went up to Colorado. He explored the Mojave. He was quite an impressive guy, and it was his and Sarah's only meeting. Their trip from San Diego to San Gabriel was supposed to take 3 nights in camp, but it instead took 5 nights due to a large storm, and that storm occurred when Sarah was in Orange County. And so he later described the trip as taking 6 very trying days due to the torrential rains overhead and the mud under our feet. So he didn't see much on his second trip through Orange County. But a year later, he starts planning the founding of San Juan Capistrano. Sarah wanted a mission among the numerous Chumash Indians in the Santa Barbara Channel, but there was a lack of available soldiers. So it forced him to compromise with the founding of Mission San Juan Capistrano as a way to stop basically in between San Diego and San Gabriel. Mission San Juan Capistrano was founded in late October of 1775. It actually went through a full founding. Sarah was not present at that founding. Father Lasuen and Father Amurio were the missionaries that founded it, but within days, it was quickly abandoned. And actually Lasuen was the only one who founded it, but it doesn't matter because there was a revolt in San Diego where one of the missionaries, Luis Jaime, was actually killed. So just to get an idea of where we are here, this right here is what we think is the only known depiction of Rivera. It was drawn when he was in Baja, California, so you can get an idea of their dress. And this is a typical leather jacket soldier, soldado de fuera. And so these are the kinds of soldiers, these are the kinds of people who would have been in Orange County founding San Juan Capistrano. But when it was first founded, it was not founded where it is today. Instead, it was founded about right here in this picture, which is up San Juan Canyon from the mission today, where about Ortega Highway and Antonio Parkway meet. That was the original founding site. After the revolt in San Diego, Serra goes down to San Diego and he replans the founding of Mission San Juan Capistrano. And while he's there, he meets the first 3 Indians that later become a part of the mission that we know of. And they already had been given names, probably by Lasuen, during that initial founding. And their names were Capistrano, Buenaventura, and Bernardino. And I was able to do research and figure out who their Indian names were, or I think what their Indian names were, and I'll go more into that. But Sarah says, these 3 give me a lot of encouragement about refounding the mission. When Sarah makes his way up to Orange County, he's in southern Orange County, he starts touring the villages in southern Orange County, and the mission is refounded on November 1st, 1776. And I think I have, sorry, let me get this out of the way, because when I took my computer off, all my notes were moved over. So just give me 1 minute and I'll set it up. Okay, here we go. So here's a map of southern Orange County, and there are a couple interesting things here. This is the original founding site of Mission San Juan Capistrano. I know this is small. I'll try to make it a little bigger. And the site today is down San Juan Canyon, that's here. And all these red sites are different villages. They are different villages. And thank you, Tracy, for the cool map comment. And this brown line is the original El Camino Real, which was actually the route of the Portola Expedition. And that's partially why the mission was founded up San Juan Canyon from where it is today, because it was closer to the road. And you can see all these different red villages that Sarah would have visited, both along the way and when he arrived in the area. Okay, so the soldiers, the Indian neophytes from Baja California, the local Indians assisted in the construction of the buildings when they were there. And it's important to point out that when the mission was founded, that it was founded with Baja California neophytes. These were Indians from Baja that were brought along. We know who they are. We know a lot of their names, including Saturnino and his wife Brigida, who were the first recorded marriage at San Juan Capistrano, Leonardo, and some others. And as soon as the mission is founded, Sarah has to go pick up cattle, which are at Mission San Gabriel. The cattle were originally going to be part of the founding of a different mission, but it didn't happen, and so the cattle were going to be brought back down to San Juan Capistrano. So Sarah went to Mission San Gabriel with 3 soldiers, Jose Antonio Peña, Jose Dolores Dominguez, and Francisco Acevedo, and he was going to go pick up these cattle, but he was also going to bring back a translator, an Indian translator. Sarah wants to convert the Indians in Southern Orange County into Spaniards. And the way he's going to do that is he's going to use an interpreter from San Gabriel who speaks both a little Spanish and the Indian language. And so when he goes up to San Gabriel, that's precisely what he does. Now, when they come back after a week, they come back and they're on their return, and the Indians are in the vicinity of a village called A La Una, okay, which is out in O'Neill Park. And the Indians come out onto the road. They're painted in what Sarah recognizes is they are prepared to fight, and they have their bows and arrows in hand, and they're ready to shoot at them. Sarah's alone out in the front. Well, he's not alone. He's with the Indian interpreter he brought from San Gabriel, who I may have also identified, and with the soldier Jose Antonio Peña. Now, Sarah pleads with the interpreter, hey, tell them to stop. The translator, interpreter from San Gabriel, was unable to understand what the Indians were saying. And it turns out that there's differences in the language, the linguistics, between these different areas. From what I've been able to find out, the interpreter came from a village near the Whittier Narrows. And so he was unable to understand the language of the Indians this far south. So Sarah thought, if we can't communicate, they're gonna kill me. But the translator in a last-ditch effort yells that there are more soldiers in his Indian language in the area who would fight back. And the Indians at A La Una understand him, even if the interpreter doesn't understand them, and they back down. So it was a very close call. This incident it happened, first of all, right here in this picture. About right here, here's the road. It's one of the only parts of the original El Camino Real that's still intact, just below Old Saddleback. And over in the trees here is where A La Una was located, and it was out on the road where Sarah encountered the Indians. And this is the first incident in Orange County that is publicized in a book, some semi-widely published book. And it's right here, it's this paragraph. And this book is the biography of Sarah that was originally It was originally published in 1787 by his friend and fellow Franciscan Kalu. And you can see returning for the new mission with the said help, supplies, and wanting to go out in front of the cargo in order to arrive more quickly. Sarah and the soldier encounter these Indians. And so this is the first incident that's published in a book that happened in Orange County. Continuing with the founding, Sarah returned to San Juan Capistrano and things got worse. Not only did he almost die on the road, he learns that 2 soldiers and a servant have deserted. And he also learned that one of the soldiers was accused by an Indian captain of the neighboring village of Sagifet of raping his wife. So an investigation of all these matters is carried out by Sergeant Mariano Carrillo of the San Diego Presidio, and Sarah requested that the accused soldier be removed. He doesn't even want an investigation. He already thinks this guy is bad news to be around here, and he sends him off. And then Sarah calls most of the shots. He pretty much talks down, oh, what happened to A La Una? No big deal. Everything's fine. And the reason he was saying that was because some Indian captains of their villages, which would be called Nu in their language, had come and said that they wanted to become Christians, at least from the Spanish perspective. So he thought everything's going well here. Serra committed himself to other tasks. He directed the construction of the buildings. He wrote letters and he wrote the title pages of the registers. And from the missionaries' perspective, the conversion process at Capistrano went notably well. And this is undoubtedly because they had an interpreter. It was the first mission in Alta California where they had Indian interpreters who could communicate with the local Indians. And this facilitated a faster conversion process. Sarah finally left the mission at the beginning of December to Father Amurillo by himself for a little while before Father Mugartegui came down to San Juan Capistrano. These guys were really the guys on the ground for the first couple of years there at San Juan Capistrano. And they were left with a handful of Baja California Indians and soldiers and some local Indians who were already under instruction. One of those Indians who was already under instruction, that means going through catechism, was the Indian that Sarah had met in San Diego before the founding, who was named Juan Capistrano. Juan Capistrano's actual name, his Indian name was Kutkul, and he was the first adult who ended up being baptized at the mission. He was from the village of Ojunga, which is Coto de Casa. That's where he was from. And he was baptized only a month after Sarah left. And he was also married just later that year. We don't know his age, but he was married later that year, so he must have been in his teens or older. Here is Sarah's baptismal. This is the register, and this is what he wrote in. And one thing to see here, the baptisms of this mission of San Juan Capistrano, alias, other name, Sajevit. This is the name of the Indian village it was next to. Notice that that is actually added by Father Amurillo. Sarah called the mission San Juan Capistrano de Juanes Savit. And Amurillo actually had to cross that out and add in that it was Sajevit, probably after he was there longer and learned the real name. Between 1776 and 1778, Sarah's back in Monterey, but he's still dealing with San Juan Capistrano. So at the time, he requests a painting of St. John of Capistrano. It's painted by Jose Pais. It was delivered on the San Antonio, one of the ships from the Portola Expedition, and it's still in the Basilica Church today. Actually, a quick funny story about that. Sarah said, I want to see the painting. Can you guys send it by ship to Monterey first so I can see it? And even though I have a bad name in these matters, I promise I'll send it down to San Juan Capistrano. I promise. It didn't end up going to Monterey. It went straight to San Diego and then up to San Juan Capistrano. He also sent a book to the missionaries at San Juan Capistrano, the Itinerario, which is a general guide for missionaries. And he sent it to the mission, and it's also still at the mission today. And I'll show you both of these in just a minute. Now, at this time, numerous incidents are going on in the mission, and this is, I did a lot of research on these, and I would tell you more about them, but because we had some issues with technology, I'll have to just go quickly through them. In June of 1777, soldiers were accused of working with an Indian captain to procure women. An investigation is carried out where the soldier says, I indeed had sex with one of the Indian women, but it was consensual. They didn't know exactly what was going on. They ended up taking some of the soldiers and sending them back to the Presidio. And in just a little more than 6 months later, there was a planned Indian revolt. Oh, I should say in between this, there was also 3 Indians killed in about San Mateo Canyon due to another incident, which is that the Indian men were complaining that that the women had now been ending up with soldiers or ending up with some of the Baja California Indians in the mission. And so this disrupted the courting practices, and this was a big problem. The other big problem was there was a drought for the first 2 years the mission was there. And the Indians blamed the Spanish, saying they're the ones causing the drought. They actually plan a revolt, and a cook at the mission warns the missionaries. Reinforcements are sent from San Diego, and they break it up. But anyways, here is the painting by Jose de Pais, and this is still in the Basilica Church. And this is of St. John of Capistrano. This is also a second painting. Serra made 2 requests for the painting because he didn't know. He actually wrote the second request 2 days after this one arrived. This might be, after he made a second request, another painting of St. John of Capistrano. This is the Itinerario, the book that Serra inscribed for San Juan Capistrano. You can see, se aplica a la misión de San Juan Capistrano de Juanes Sabit, and you can see that Amurillo is once again crossed it out to put Sajavit, and the año of 1777, and there's Serra's signature. Interestingly, the first page on the book is this, and this book is, there's Serra's name, Para ir a San Saba. This exact book was supposed to go to the mission San Saba in Texas, but there had been an Indian revolt there. Serra was going to go to Texas in the late 1850s. It didn't end up going to San Saba, and Serra held on to the book, and it ended up at San Juan Capistrano, where it still is today. Okay, Serra's 4th time in Orange County, October 22nd through December 30th, 1778. 1778, Serra received the 3rd authority to confirm neophytes. It was usually only reserved for a bishop, but out on the frontier, in the frontier circumstances, sometimes the leading ecclesiastical person would be able to do it. And he went to all the missions. San Juan Capistrano itself, because of that drought, it was moved down canyon to its current location on October 4th, 1778. It was perhaps finalized, the movement, in time for Serra's visit. When Serra arrived, numerous children gathered near him without clothes on, indicating that they were not yet neophytes. Serra asks Fathers Amurillo and Mugartegui, hey, what's the deal? Why aren't these guys baptized? And the fathers say, well, we've had a lot of issues here, and we're afraid if we baptize too many and we can't feed them, that they may revolt. Serra says, forget that. He looks over all of the accounts of the mission. He goes, you're growing enough food. You have enough supplies. Baptize them. And Serra personally does it that night that he arrives. Okay, when we think of San Juan Capistrano at this time, you can't think red tile roofs. This is before that. This is before there are those. They're made out of brush. This is the kind of thing a mission would look like. This is the earliest image that we have in Alta California that's not a map. Some things that you can recognize, all of the men are lined up here, and then all of the women are lined up here. In the mission churches, the men and the women would be separated with an aisle down the middle. In this image, we have Pedro Fages, who knew Serra well, and he's actually welcoming a French diplomat or French explorer in the area. But it's an interesting picture because it gives you an idea of what San Juan Capistrano would have looked like at this time. Okay, Serra's first baptism is of a child named Harobit, who was Kut Kol, or Juan Capistrano's brother. Serra knew Juan Capistrano. This was the first person he really met and got to know when he was there during the founding. And so he honors him by baptizing his brother, and even Serra names his own servant as his godfather. The second baptism was Tomeao Sahut
or Bernardino, another one of the Indians possibly here that Sarah met before the founding. And the fourth baptism of the day was Yigu Yigu, who is named as Buenaventura's brother. And Buenaventura is another one of those three Indians that Sarah met in San Diego prior to the founding. So these may be the same that Sarah met before the founding. It would indicate that he had personal relationships. He knew these people. Sarah spent a week confirming about 146 neophytes, but he missed 2 that he could not find. Here are some of his entries into the baptismal register. Sarah wrote these, and this is Ladislau Bernardino. You can see the name here. You can see Juan de Capistrano. Remember, it's his brother that's being baptized. I would go further into this, but we've got to save time. Okay, Serra, after his third trip, which was in 1778, goes back up to Monterey, and there's a new governor shortly thereafter, Governor Neve, and he made sweeping changes. San Juan Capistrano starts supplying food for the soldiers and for San Diego, but San Juan Capistrano made significant developments agriculturally, started growing wheat up San Juan Canyon, up Ortega Highway from the mission today, beans and corn, I forgot to mention corn, near the mission in Trabuco Creek. And they also started producing their first wine, probably in about 1782, 1783, somewhere in that area. And they also built the Serra Chapel, the one we know today. If you look in the walls of it, it doesn't have tile, which may indicate that it's pre when they had the kilns to build the tile, because the walls are very, very old. And so that's the building that's going, that's one of the main buildings that's made, but also that south wing is made by this time. Serra had to shuffle around missionaries to found Mission San Buenaventura. He left Father Mugartegui alone for a time in Capistrano. And Mugartegui actually says, I don't want to be here alone, and I'm about to give this place up and end the mission entirely. And so Serra had to make sure that the mission was staffed thereafter. He was constantly dealing with issues where the missionaries, the 2 missionaries at the mission, would have problems with each other. They'd want to leave. They'd want to get out of Alta California. It was a hard job being Serra. Serra went on what he knew. On his 5th time through Orange County, he knew this would be his last time through the province, last confirmation tour in 1783. After going by ship to San Diego, he likely took the new El Camino Real along the coast to San Juan Capistrano. So, like I said, San Juan Capistrano moved down canyon to its current location near Ahachme, which is why we call the Indians there the Hachamen. And the El Camino Real, instead of following the Portola route inland, is moved to the coast. And we actually see some of the villages here, Panhe and Uchme, which is down here at Las Flores. We see increases in the number of baptisms from those villages because there's more Spanish traffic along the coast. So he probably went along the coast, what you know is the 5 freeway today through Camp Pendleton. He saw the same view. Serra's shown around the mission for a couple days, then confirmed 90 children before confirming the rest of the neophytes in the following days at the mission. And this is his entry. This is one of his records of that confirmation tour. Misión de San Juan Capistrano, the Confirmaciones, 221. And you can see how he's writing. Here's whose saint's day it is. Notice he still calls the mission Juanes Savit. This document is currently on display at the mission in what is the dining room, just north of the sala. Okay, Serra's legacy in Mission San Juan Capistrano in Orange County. Serra had originally assigned Father Fuster to San Juan Capistrano, and Fuster was the main thrust behind the building of the Great Stone Church. So Serra has a direct connection to that. You also know of the Serra Chapel. I should have said chapel. He has schools named after him, street named after him. He still has a large presence, statues, etc. Serra sincerely believed he was doing good for the Indians, both temporally and spiritually. One of the things to keep in mind, Serra was one of 5 children, 2 of whom survived infancy. His hometown of Petra in Mallorca, when he was born, had about 2,000, population of 2,000. By the time he died in Alta California, less than a year after his last visit to San Juan Capistrano, the population of Petra was less than 50% of what it had been. It's probably around 700. This is what he saw. He lived an agrarian lifestyle where droughts and disease were something that was normal. He did not like seeing this happen to the Indians. This was his purpose for being in Alta California. His flights and time in Orange County was very demanding. His vision of the future of today's Orange County failed to come to fruition. What Serra imagined Orange County would look like would be the Indians would eventually own it. Their descendants would still be, they'd be Spanish citizens. They'd be farming it. They'd be living in villages. The mission churches would become parish churches. That was his vision. Orange County today does not match that vision. The Indians' perspective was completely different than the Spanish perspective. Their responses were varied. There was a distribution of responses, like my students. Some students love learning math. Some students hate learning math. Most are somewhere in between. They're indifferent. And the Indians, their culture, all of their complex linguistic and religious culture, and all of their all the facets of their whole ethnic makeup were in large part destroyed by the Spanish, because they believed they needed to be Catholic and they needed to get rid of that way of life. They were no longer going to be hunter-gatherers. They were going to be agriculturalists. What Serra didn't understand is that you can't just change a religion because religion is intertwined with the ethnic fabric of a people. And so the missionaries ran into all sorts of trouble doing that. But the Indians were united in strategies that allowed them to persevere today. In fact, there are descendants from all of those villages that we can find today, still living even in the county. The Indians that Serra knew and confirmed built the mission we know today. 3 of them that he confirmed died in the Great Stone Church during the earthquake, and some lived as late as the 1840s. The story of Yigu Yigu, or Buenaventura. So this is perhaps one of the Indians that Serra met before the founding. Yigu Yigu ended up being baptized at the mission in 1777, right after the founding. It was just the 75th baptism. He lived a long life at the mission. He was married in the Serra Chapel. Although he never had children with the woman he married, he later had a child out of wedlock, a daughter who died at age 6 in 1806 during a measles outbreak. A month later, he was in the midst of grieving. He attended the ceremonies accompanying the completion of the Great Stone Church. In the year 1812, his wife died suddenly on the beach, and 6 months later, the church fell down. He ended up marrying, after his wife died, he ended up marrying the woman that he had previously had a kid with, but then tragically, his new bride died less than a year later. Within a year of her death, he was at the mission when Bouchard was there, the Argentine privateer, and he continued to live through the secularization period of the mission. He may have contributed to Father Boscana's ethnological essay on the local Indians. And he lived long enough to be just up the creek when Dana was throwing hides off of the cliff in 2 years before the mast. He finally died in 1836. There's one last story I'd like to talk to you about the Indians before we close here. And this is this woman right here, and her name was Alam. She was an Indian woman from Uchme, and Serra would have either met her in Uchme, but he for sure confirmed her. He confirmed her in 1783. So this is a woman who knew Serra. She was already an adult at the time that she first met him. And she was baptized at San Juan in 1779, and she married one of the Spanish soldiers, Pio Quinto Zuniga. Together they had 10 or 11 children, and they moved around to different Spanish settlements. While her husband died, she was still alive in 1825, and this right here is her giving permission to her son to get married in the city of Los Angeles. And because no sabe firmar, she doesn't know how to sign, she signs her name with the cross. And this cross is an Indian who was living in what is now today Las Flores, Las Pulgas Road, and the 5 freeway. That's where she lived, and she ended up getting into the mission system, being absorbed into it, marrying a soldier, and here she is giving permission to her son to marry. And she lived for a long time after that. So Sarah's story is connected to these people's story. And that's the thing we want to reclaim. Sarah's looked at as an individual who represents this time. He's not the only person. He's interacting with these people, and we can put their stories together. All right, everybody, if you want to read any more about this, I have an excerpt of my forthcoming book on my blog, visionsofcalifornia.blogspot.com. And I've got to thank all these great people who've been helping me out, Dr. Rosemary Beebe, Dr. Robert Sankovitz, David Rex Galindo, Reverend William Kreckelberg, who's been very helpful, and of course, Stephanie George and Chris Jepson of the Orange County Historical Society, Steve Leck, who's always so helpful, and my mom and my grandparents are here, and so I have to thank them. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Grandma and Grandpa. And a very special thanks to my late mentor, the late and great Phil Burgandy, who I had many discussions with on starting this topic. So with that, thank you all so much for attending tonight. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for sticking it out.
Thank you so much, Eric. Fantastic talk, and so much work I know has gone into that. It shows, and it shows even more in the draft of your book that I've seen. I think everybody who found things of interest in this tonight would definitely like to look forward to seeing more of that story, and it is expansive. It is amazing. Thank you, everyone, for all of those attending virtually tonight. Thank you for your patience with our technical glitches and difficulties and finding our way. Hopefully by next month, we'll have some of those bugs ironed out and know how to do some of that stuff. So, again, our first try at this, but we're going to keep trying to have a meeting, as always, second Thursday.